Welcome back to Studio F, where on Fast Times with Willy B, we'll be reviewing Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
Hit it, Russell.
Welcome back to Fast Times with Willy B. I'm Willy B. I got Rob on the show today. Rob, how we doing?
I'm doing great.
Doing good.
Man, I just had a good time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
That's I just walked out of the theater and had a good time.
There you go. You got the setup. You got the everything's here today.
Oh yeah. No, I went to that movie prepared.
Yeah. Yep. I know you got the Slimer popcorn bucket.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
But I got that like the day it came out. Yeah, I had the inside scoop on that.
Yeah.
I ran out to the theater, got that immediately. So.
There you go. I had to bust out my Slimer cup for the episode.
It's a good time.
Yeah. But I think everybody knows what we're reviewing today. That's Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
What a film. Yeah. Directed by Gil Kenan.
Yes, Gil Kenan. Honestly, gonna be 100% here. Going into this,
didn't have high hopes.
I had to Google
Gil
Kenan because I was like, all right, he's taken over the Ghostbusters franchise. Yeah. He just got handed this by Jason Reitman, first Ghostbusters director outside of the Reitman family.
Yep.
I had to know who this guy was. I looked him up, and I'm looking at like Ghost House or Monster House.
Okay.
Monster House. He directed the animated movie Monster House.
And I'm like, really? Okay.
I'm like, okay. So we got Monster House. We had there was something else too, another horror thing under his belt, but really not much.
Okay.
For director, not much at all. Mm-hmm. So I really didn't know what to expect. Mm-hmm. I enjoy Monster House. And I was hoping from that, I was like, you know what? I watch that every year around Halloween, so we'll see what we get. Didn't know what to expect coming out of him for a Ghostbusters movie. So
Monster House is a well-done animated film. But as a kid, it was one of like 3 DVDs we had in our van that had the mini TV that came down. So it's kind of been overplayed for me. So it's nothing on him. It is a very well done film, but it's one of those movies that it's hard for me to revisit because I might have seen it 300 times. So
that's fair. I was sensing a little bit of hostility on the Monster House. I wasn't sure how to feel about that.
No, it's still, like I said, it's still a very well done. It's honestly, for a kid's film, kind of like nightmare fuel.
Yes, and that was one thing that going into this I was kind of thinking about is like, okay, so we have somebody who at least at one time had some good experience balancing sort of the elements of the horror genre with a little bit of lighthearted humor.
Like a family fun.
Exactly. So that's going into this kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And I think he delivered.
Oh, for sure.
Honestly.
I mean, Tim Burton's a guy you think of immediately off the rip when you think of like horror elements with family fun, family stories, family enjoying films. But no, I think he did a good job. I mean, we'll go into the good, but we'll start with the cast first before we hop into the good. I mean, it speaks for itself. Paul Rudd, Carrie Coon, Finn Wolfhard, McKenna Grace, all of these obviously returning from Afterlife. We get the original 4, Annie Potts. We get Ernie Hut, or not the original 4. Sorry, rest in peace to Harold Ramis, but
Harold Ramis, always missed.
I was thinking original 4 because I said Annie Potts, but she was a part of the original 5.
She balanced out the team a little bit in this one. Yeah, I will give her that.
But Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson, Dan Aykroyd, Emily Allen Lind. I liked seeing her. She was in the Babysitter movies on Netflix. She was like the love interest in those. But yeah, I mean, the cast is loaded.
Oh. Absolutely.
It's full big names.
Star-studded cast.
Kumail Nanjiani.
Unbelievable.
Oh, man.
Let me tell you.
Let's go to the good.
Yes, okay. All right, let's get into it. The good, he's a great place to start.
Yes.
And I will say this, watching the trailers for this movie, I did not expect him to be in so much of this film.
Oh, I thought he just sold the relic and then was gone.
I thought he was going to be an introduction, a little cameo, a fun character that would pop up. I thought that we saw most of his role in the trailer, to be honest.
Same.
Having him around and his play with so many of the other characters, fantastic.
Yeah.
He was funny throughout the whole thing. I just enjoyed him the entire time. He definitely lightened up a lot of the more serious moments throughout the film, which I know there's, nowadays there's always this sort of thing. It's like the Marvel rule where you have to balance out your, serious moments with jokes and things like that. And it doesn't always work for me.
No,
but
I'm in the same boat.
I think his character really helped to lighten up a little bit of the movie and some of the more serious moments. And I never felt that it was out of place or distracting.
Oh, for sure. I think I'm in the same realm. If a movie does it well, I'm all for mixing in comedy with serious stuff. Thor Ragnarok did it well.
Yeah.
Thor Love and Thunder is the other aspect of things.
Thor Love and Thunder.
If you're just forcing stuff, why?
Yeah.
Like, if it's tarnishing the story at that point, I'm not for it. But in this sense, I thought Kumail Nanjiani was great in that sense, and I thought Paul Rudd was also a great comic relief. He wasn't like one-liner after one-liner like Nanjiani was, but he had his place when it came to the comedy on this film.
And Paul Rudd, honestly, since Afterlife, has been such a great addition to the franchise. When Afterlife was first coming out, I wasn't really sure how I was going to feel about Paul Rudd. In fact, full disclosure, when Afterlife was first coming out, I honestly thought that Paul Rudd's character was going to be a little bit of a twist. I for real thought that he was going to be like a twist reveal villain in that first movie. Like, I don't know why. Yeah. I was so sure of it.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. I've gotten past that. But yeah, he has been so just delightful.
Yeah.
His character, and especially in this movie, seeing his interactions with McKenna Grace as Phoebe Spangler, those interactions, his, play back and forth with their mom. Yeah. Carrie Coon.
Yeah.
Callie Spangler. Yes. In the movie. His relationship with her. Yeah. I think is really neat, and we get to see so much of that in this movie. And this movie does touch so much more on those personal relationships.
For sure.
And that, for me, I mean, huge in the good category. Yeah. That was great. I think they did a really good job with bringing in the human elements of this film.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's the science teacher in the first film, and she has that, when I say she, I mean Phoebe, has this bond with him. And now you get to see him step more into that father figure. Yes. And, she calls him dad, and
oh man.
Which, by the way, there is a spoiler alert on this video, so you're full to say anything you want.
We can we can
go all the way. But see him step into that father role, and he's not good at being the bad guy, and then he does it. It sucks. And then which is how it would be if you're the stepdad. You want to be the cool guy. You want to be their buddy.
Exactly.
But you can't always be that way. When's the right time to make that step and, discipline a kid that's technically not yours, but is kind of becoming yours? And it did it really well, for sure.
I think that was a really big theme in this movie, sort of that that family dynamic. Yeah. Sort of having that new family. And I feel like that was a really relatable plot point for a lot of people. It is a hard thing to think about, stepping into a family, and finding your place among them, and sort of that whole dynamic. And I think that, from Paul Rudd's standpoint, Gary Gruberson, he, was trying to find his place in his new family. Yeah. I think in a lot of ways too, all the characters in this film, it was about finding your place. Yeah. McKenna Grace, Phoebe Spangler, was trying to find her place.
Yeah. After she's kind of benched. Is what they said.
Yes. And that was a big thing. I mean, right off the bat, we have Walter Peck is back.
Yeah.
And it's this whole big thing. And I gotta say, in this film more than any other, your antagonist was kind of right.
Yeah.
Like, you can't have a 15-year-old
no.
hanging out the side of a car.
No, not at all.
With a nuclear accelerator strapped to him. Like, it's just not a good idea. And I think that the fact that they had sort of this, secondary antagonist that was coming in with really valid points. Mm-hmm. And it sort of sets up, Phoebe's parents as sort of on the side of the bad guy. And I thought that was interesting too. But, you have Phoebe struggling to find her place. Mm-hmm. She wants to be a Ghostbuster.
Yeah.
She can't be a Ghostbuster. She's struggling. She doesn't know who she is. And I think in a lot of other ways too, this movie is also exploring the fact that there's some other things going on with her where she's, trying to figure herself out in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. And, even to a smaller extent, you have characters like Finn Wolfhard.
Yeah.
Trevor Spangler.
Yeah.
He's trying to figure himself out.
Mm-hmm.
He's 18 years old now. He thinks he's an adult, but is still going to his mom about hey mom, there's a weird leak in my ceiling. And she's like, we'll figure it out, know? He's trying to find himself, even down to, Dan Aykroyd, mm-hmm. Ray Stantz. There is a moment in this film between, Ray Stantz and Winston Zeddemore. Mm-hmm. And it is fantastic. The acting between Ernie Hudson and Dan Aykroyd in that scene, I think was great. And it's when, Ernie Hudson is basically looking at him and he's like, hey man,
go on a vacation.
You're too old. Yeah. You can't be playing Ghostbuster anymore. And what it boils down to is he's like, listen, you could have gotten those kids hurt.
Yeah.
And when you see the realization on Dan Aykroyd's face where he's like, oh,
yeah,
I could have hurt those kids because I was out chasing like my glory days. And that to me, that scene was really poignant in that hit. But yeah, there's so much in this movie
for sure
where you have so many characters that are looking for their place in a changing world.
Oh yeah.
And I think that was really interesting for a Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah, it's a coming of age for everybody. Mm-hmm. And touching back on the good points being brought up by your antagonist, you even have Winston who's coming, he's making good point, he's supporting, he's like, I hate this guy, but you can't do that. You can't do this. And it was really cool. I thought it was a different story from, you Afterlife, we were talking about it before. It was like 2018 Halloween. It's like,
oh yeah,
rebooting, but going back to the mold. This one was a different but still compelling Ghostbusters story.
Yes. And that, I really enjoyed that about this film. It was a new story in a world that we have revisited several times. Afterlife, like we were saying, it was irreverent. It was very nostalgic. But it was built around, the past.
Yeah.
We had the villain from the first movie returning. Mm-hmm. We had all the characters from the first. It was, sort of everything tied back to that first film, which I think they needed to ground the franchise, especially 2016. Yeah. I'll just say that. But I think, Afterlife was it was a good soft reboot. Mm-hmm. And we had such an opportunity with a second movie. And one of the things that I am happiest about how this film went down, I was so worried moving into this film that Ghostbusters Frozen Empire was going to fall into the trap of becoming more of like a superhero movie.
Okay.
Yeah. I was concerned about the level of action that we would see because that's the way of Hollywood now.
Yeah.
And I was concerned about how it would push, but this movie at its core, and I definitely think this is for the best, it is a story about people. And I almost feel like a lot of the ghost busting comes second to the human elements of the story.
For sure. Speaking of the ghost busting, we can kind of go to the villains here. You and I both loved the look of Garaka.
Oh, man.
Great character.
What a good design.
Yeah. Menacing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a kid going into this movie, that's scary. Like,
yeah,
it was scary. It's a menacing look for somebody, older, loving this film. But if you're a kid going into this, like, that might send you home with some nightmares.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the clouds and him, like, kind of like hovering in, and he's 20 feet tall, blue eyes is all you see in the horns, and it's really great design. Great design. I love too that with Garaka, we got this interesting setup where Garaka wasn't necessarily presented as being a ghost. Garaka, from the context of the movie, was set up to be more a mythical creature like a djinn. Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting because, up until now we've had ghosts and we've had, Gozer, which I think technically was maybe a demigod.
Yeah.
And then we've had Vigo and, Vigo the Carpathian, which was the soul of a magician trapped in a painting. So, there's been a variation, but ultimately it always kind of comes down to ghosts. And to have something that was in essence very, very different, and with the concept of Garaka kind of being sort of like a djinn or like a genie sort of mythology, the design pulls so much from that. The smoke elements to, his appearance and things, just so well done.
Yeah.
Wonderfully crafted. There's a scene in the film where he reclaims his horns.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I got a good look at that. And that's definitely one of those scenes that, like you were saying, thinking like from the perspective of like, if you're a kid and you're going to see this movie and you're like, yeah, Ghostbusters, watching him shove those horns
on the right side,
back into like the holes inside of his head, and like watching those in the sound too of like him like the kind of squishy cracking.
Makes your skin crawl a little.
Oh yeah, it was something. And shots like that definitely borrow from the more horror elements.
Yeah.
And I was happy to see that, but yeah, unbelievable design.
Yeah.
Even with some of the new ghosts.
Yeah.
Some of the new ghosts were great design. The Hell's Kitchen sewer dragon.
The sewer dragon, yep. I was about to say that. Yeah.
Very cool. Almost like a barracuda.
Yeah.
Oh, very neat. Very cool design. I really liked that.
And then we have a human looking, not humanistic, I don't even know if that's a word, but a human looking ghost.
Yes.
And that's Emily Allen Lynn's character. And it's cool, you see the little just minor details like the flames because she died in a fire and her family owned the match company. And then, I don't know if you caught it, but the diner was
Melody.
Melody Diner. Her last name was Melody. She was sitting like, all of those minor connections were cool, but like just even the look of her was really cool when she's playing chess and you see the little flames and they did a really good job with the design of all of our spirits in this film.
Oh yeah. And I think, definitely with her for sure, we got some practice with that in Afterlife.
Yeah.
So I think they've kind of perfected a little bit of that, imposed humanistic ghost look. Very good just all throughout. The special effects were great.
Oh, special effects were phenomenal.
Yeah. And especially with things like the proton beams and stuff.
Yes.
In that movie, there was, I don't think they've ever looked better.
Yeah.
And especially with what they did with them, the moments where they were frozen.
Yeah. And
Like,
they'd crinkle apart and
they would
shatter.
crash, and then you would see the light slowly go out in the ice, and that was such a cool effect. It was like you could see the proton, stream continuing to cool inside the ice until it burns out, and it was so neat. And then to see too something different, there at the end of the movie in our climax, McKenna Grace shows up with the modified proton pack.
Yeah.
And we get that, particle beam where, it's got this brass alloy added into it. And we get these green, almost kind of unstable streams. And I don't know if you noticed, but there were moments where there were actually bits of plasma that weren't forming into the stream, but were actually dripping down off the tip of the wand onto the ground. And that was just so neat. And it felt raw and messy, and it was new, and it was very well executed. All in all, just
great
special effects were great. Yes, absolutely.
The detail was top notch.
Things that easily they could have come in and done just a beam in a different color and been like, there we go. But they actually really put some time into it. Yeah, and made it feel like something new.
Yeah. You were talking about the beams. The scene that sticks out to me in that sense is that opening scene where they're chasing the sewer dragon. And when it's cutting into the building, and it was just it was so good. VFX were great. A lot of the technical stuff was great. I thought the sound was phenomenal. I mean, you even said it, the sound was putting the horns in. There's a scene where Garaka breaks open, the red beam shoots out of the firehouse, and right there, it's one of those, like we were talking about how it kind of reminded us of Shin Godzilla. Yeah. It goes quiet, and the beam is like, boom, and the sound was just very well done. Very well done. I thought the sound was top notch.
I don't know the theater that you saw it in, but I saw it in one of the XD theaters. Okay. And that scene was so impressive. The sense of force that you got behind the sound design in that moment, because we've seen 1,000 sky beams over the past 10 years. It's in everything now, but man, that it felt like we had impact. And honestly, in that moment too, like when that happened, because of that force behind it, there was this growing concern for characters. Yeah. Because legitimately, I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, are they all dead now? Like, what just happened? Yeah. Like, is Phoebe okay? She was in the basement. She's got to be dead. Like, just thinking about like how much, in some of those moments, the sound design really impacted the scope of the film. It was very well done.
Oh, for sure. And, going back to the VFX and almost before this, all the ice stuff was done very well too. Mm-hmm. Shooting out of the ground and all of that stuff. We touched on the acting. I think my standouts were Nanjiani and Paul Rudd, and we hit those pretty good.
All in all, I think kind of throughout the film, I don't think that there were really any duds as far as acting.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I couldn't really point to anybody and be like, yeah, they didn't really do a good job. Mm-hmm. I thought everyone, with the time that they were given, did very well.
For sure.
And I do think, kind of touch on that. One of the things I would definitely put in the good category, for the expansive cast that they had, the management of characters was very well executed.
For sure.
I didn't feel like people were really getting forgotten. I thought that, we got to see everyone we wanted to.
Yeah.
And they all had a part to play, and that can be very difficult to do with a script.
Yeah.
And so, I do have to say they did a great job with balancing their cast.
For sure. And, this is probably the least we've seen Bill Murray, but I feel like it was the perfect amount. I feel like what we got was perfect. I don't think we needed any more Bill Murray, but I didn't want to not see Bill Murray.
No,
you know what I mean?
I agree with that. And I would say, as far as Bill Murray goes, I could have maybe not had him there for the conclusion in the final act.
You know he's got to show up for the final.
He does. And that's and the reason why that is not going to fall into a meh or a bad or anything like that, I don't think it was necessary, but it is so Ghostbusters that I can't fault it because how are you going to have in Ghostbusters 1, Ghostbusters 2, it doesn't matter. They were always there.
Yep.
They all made it to that last moment. And so, like, of course he has to show up. But I thought the moment where he really shined the most was in his original introduction, where we see him interviewing Kumail Nanjiani's character.
Yes.
And, you know, they're sitting there. He's got the pasta bowl strapped to his head.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think one of the first question was like, Bill Murray asked him about a puppy.
Yeah.
And he's like, would you kill it or would you love it? And it's just the way he delivers it is you're sitting there and you're like you kind of feel in that moment, you're like, well, I don't know. Like, I guess I would love it.
Yeah.
Like it's just the way he delivers that is so good.
And the second one, would you, if you had to kill a kid, would you like skin it or like?
Oh, it was like if you had to eat a child, would you
skinless
or eat it skinless or with the skin on? And Kumail Nanjiani in that moment, he's like, well, is it a human child? And like,
am I related to them?
Yeah, exactly. It's and the back and forth between the two of them is perfect, but. In that scene in particular, you know, he felt like Peter Venkman.
Oh, for sure.
And that's really like more than anything with these newer Ghostbuster movies. I love having the old cast back, but I love seeing them in character.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, you know, I have to hand to Dan Aykroyd. He is the best at.
Yeah.
Every time I see him, it's just Ray Stantz, and he's so good. But loved having everybody back
for sure. Is there anything you'd like to add to the good? I mean, we've covered a lot. It was, I think it's getting a little too much hate right now, in my opinion. But
I think so. So, as a Ghostbusters fan, I will say, the biggest struggle for Ghostbusters is its fan base.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been a Ghostbusters fan most of my life. I grew up with hand-me-down Ghostbusters toys from my older brother. I, grew up watching, reruns of the cartoon.
Yeah.
I watched the movies watching them now in my 30s and realizing what's in those movies, I watched them way too early.
Yeah.
It's a little kid and, Sigourney Weaver's asking Bill Murray if he wants to be inside her. And I'm like, as a kid, I didn't get that.
Yeah.
But I probably shouldn't have been watching that. But no, it's one of those things I've grown up with. I've always had a love for, and the fan base is super rough.
Yeah.
And I think part of what does it is that the fan base for Ghostbusters, it spans so many generations.
Yeah.
And you have the old diehards, you have newer fans, and you have everything in between. It's impossible to please everybody.
For sure.
You're never going to do it. And unfortunately, I think sometimes the people that speak the loudest are the ones that are unhappy.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of that going on right now. I think we'll see this even out, honestly.
I hope. This is definitely, Ghostbusters in general, the entire franchise, I feel like you can say, if you're a casual fan of the Ghostbusters, you could enjoy every movie in this franchise.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not like I agree with what you're saying. It's usually the diehards that are the more more judgmental side. That's why I was glad when Mo mentioned you. I was like, oh, sweet, I can get the perspective of diehards. So he's going to be honest,
Oh yeah.
And to hear you like it makes me happy because I did enjoy this film.
Yeah. Oh, I liked it. There were genuinely moments in this movie where I, just watching it, just taking it all in. And I was just, one of the things that got me right off the bat, in the beginning of the movie, the title sequence.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, but they pulled such a perfect recreation of the retro Ghostbusters font. And it looked and felt old.
It felt like 84.
It was. And when I saw that pop up, Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire, there was a part inside of me that was just so excited.
Buckled
because
up.
like I was like, all right, let's do it. Whatever's coming my way, I'm here for it.
Yep.
Like let's go. And honestly, I think and you know, I'll probably touch on this a little bit more as we get into some things. This movie specifically, when it was being written, so it was written by Jason Reitman and Gil Kennan, the director. Gil Kennan has gone on record multiple times saying that this movie was highly influenced by the real Ghostbusters animated series.
Yeah.
And boy, does it show.
Yeah.
Having owned that series for years, having watched every episode more times than an adult man should.
It's okay. We all have our, guilty pleasures, you can say.
It is definitely one of those things that watching this movie, especially in like the action moments and stuff like that, and even in some of the story beats, wow, does that show?
Yeah.
And I think that, when you have, some people that are expecting it to be Ghostbusters 1, you're not going to get that. And I don't think we should at this point, honestly.
No. Why does everything have to be this? What,
Yeah. It's time for something new.
Yeah.
This franchise is moving, evolving, and so are the characters. And this movie highlighted that. And I think it was great.
This is another franchise. I like to compare to Scream, which I don't even want Scream 7 to happen at this point. But when you talk about Scream 5 and Scream 6...
That's a whole other episode, man. Let me tell you.
When you talk about Scream 5 and Scream 6, Afterlife and Frozen Empire, the same realm, that you introduced all these new characters that you can get behind.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's why I'm so bummed about Scream 7, because 5, I loved the core 4, but...
Yeah.
Ghostbusters has done a great job at not only rebooting but creating these characters. And yes, they're Spanglers, so that helps. That helps nostalgia.
Yeah, and
but you can get behind them. You can get behind them.
Oh yeah. Well, and even you mentioned that like they're Spanglers. That was even part of this movie.
Yeah.
You had the whole dynamic between Phoebe and Callie in the film, and that was even brought up at one point. Like, oh my God. I also want to address Phoebe is mean. Mm-hmm. She's smart, but she is mean. Some of the stuff that she says in this movie, I'm like, whew, girl, like you were just out of hand. Yeah. But yeah, when she looks at her mom at one point and literally tells her the only reason you're not answering phones is because your last name is Spangler. Like, that hurt me.
That was rough.
I was just like, I was taken aback. And I mean, that's part of it. She's 15 years old. She's figuring things out. She's having a rough time with herself. Exactly. And there's a lot that she's going through right now. And her one dream, the one thing that she's wanted, has been taken away from her. Yeah. And that's really rough. And she's lashing out in a lot of ways. But yeah, it's just one of those things, like the Spangler name, is important, but I think, one of the points that this movie even makes is it's not necessarily about the name. Mm-hmm. It's about the actions of these characters and what they choose. Yeah. Especially in the moments where, there's a moment in this film where they could just walk away. Yeah. And I think, it's that choice to stay. Yeah. And to fight and to be Ghostbusters is what makes them, not necessarily the Spangler name. Yeah. So,
I do want to before we hop over to the mat, I want to give a shout out to the hairstyle. I don't think like this will be something that's nominated for makeup and hairstyling at the Academy Awards or anything like that, but McKenna Grace.
Okay.
In both films, I'm like, when I first started watching Afterlife, I didn't even realize it was her at first. Yeah. What they did to make her look like a Spangler, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
And you see her in like young Sheldon and stuff like that. She is not the same at all. It's crazy how well they did like the hairstyling and all that.
Oh, yeah. So, full disclosure, one of my first introductions to McKenna Grace was Ghostbusters Afterlife. Mm-hmm. At least, like, the point where I'm like, okay, I connect a face with the name. Like, I know I've seen her before then, but like never really put two and two together.
For sure.
When I saw her doing like press tours and like, you know, red carpet walks and stuff like that in relations to Ghostbusters, I was like, who's that blonde girl?
Yeah.
What is she, like, who's she play?
Yeah.
And then like, they're like, oh, it's McKenna Grace. And I'm like, no, it's not.
No.
Like, shut up. No, it's not.
It's crazy.
It's unbelievable. And I think, you know, like you're saying, it's probably not going to win awards. And I think part of the reason why it wouldn't is because it looks so natural.
Yeah.
They really do such a good job of making her naturally look like a Spangler. Yeah. And it's, you know, it's all based off of, you know, Harold Ramis's appearance in the first couple films. But like the details, the glasses, the hair, everything, it's so on point. And at no point in those films do I look at her and think that it's a wig. Yeah. Which I cannot say about a lot of actors in a lot of films.
Yeah. So. Yeah. No, I just want to give that its just due. But we can hop over to the men now. We have a few. I have a few things here. If you don't agree with any of them, just let me know. We kind of talked about it before. We both put the score here. It wasn't. It's not that it was bad. That's why we're putting it here. But it didn't stick out as much as other Ghostbusters scores.
Yeah. The score for me definitely fell into the meh, and my reason for that, exactly that. The parts in the movie where I noticed the score, or the parts where I actively was like, oh, it's a little musical cue. It was when they were pulling back the old music. Yeah. It was when they were referencing the original score, all of that. I honestly, other than those moments, can't even tell you if this movie had music. Yeah. I know it did.
It definitely did.
I know it did, because if that, I guarantee if the movie was silent, I probably would have noticed. But the score, for the most part, kind of fell to the background. It was almost sort of a layer of white noise behind a lot of the sequences. So it didn't do anything new or groundbreaking, in my opinion. I do like when they bring back that old score, because the first Ghostbusters movie has such a good score. It does these fun little plays with sound, and it was great. So I love that they bring that back. For sure. But again, in a franchise where you're making these huge strides forward, and you're giving us something new in such a good way. Yeah. I would love to see them go a step further with the score.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I didn't hate it, but it was one of those things. It just goes a little unnoticed. That's what it boils down to.
And I think the biggest missed opportunity with the score, Garaka did not get his own score.
Yeah, we need a Garaka theme.
And that's like something that harkens dark, to like that old, like, you know, sort of Arabian style, but like with a little bit of an ethereal, like it could have been so cool. Yeah. You know, some deep like drums but you know, I can say that as somebody who's never composed music in my life. Yeah. So that's the big thing. Yeah. I, you know, taking a step back, humbling myself a little bit. But yeah, I think there were some things we could have gotten that would have just pushed it to that next level. For sure. But I agree. You know, it's something to think about next time. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Next Ghostbusters movie, work on the score.
Next meh for me, this is probably my major meh. It's probably where you see the reflection of my score, because I love this movie for the most. Like, I enjoyed this movie a lot for the most part. But where you see the score start to dip is probably in this meh, and that's pacing. Not that was poorly paced. I mean, it just, we had this huge buildup, and this buildup took an hour and 45 minutes. And I'm not mad, because I felt like everything in this buildup was justified. But then it led to the climax being 15 minutes, like the final, the falling action, you know, the thing that you're buckled up for. Yep. Lasting 15 minutes, and it's not very often where I say I could have used more runtime.
Oh yeah, and
give me 25 more minutes. Like,
I could have watched this movie for longer.
Yeah.
So
especially with a 2-hour movie, you don't usually say give me 225. You know,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
But I don't want to take away from that buildup because the buildup was good. I mean, were there things that could have been cut? Maybe, but give me more. Give me more in the falling. Give me more of the third act. Give me more.
So yeah, definitely agreed. I was under the impression watching the film, when you had that scene where, you know, Garaka comes into the firehouse, he's ripping everything apart, the ghosts are starting to get loose, all this is happening, everybody's getting frozen, chaos, pandemonium, you know, cats and dogs living together, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So you have all this going down, and then, you know, you have Phoebe show up with, you know, the modified proton pack, using, you know, the brass from the fire pole as, you know, a new catalyst, stuff like that. And Garaka gets hurt. That moment, I thought that was going to be a moment where Garaka gets hurt. We see that this is effective in some way. Garaka gets driven back, like he falls back either out of like fear of the fact that like, oh, dang, I actually got hurt.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I don't assume that he's super used to.
No.
So it's like, oh, I actually got hurt, gonna fall back. Or I was expecting something to happen, like maybe she like damaged one of his horns.
Yeah.
And so then he like, you know, pulls away. I thought that moment was going to be a break in action.
Yeah.
Everybody was going to regroup. We were going to get some sort of like pull together of like, okay, we know that if we add brass now, it will affect him in this way.
So they all add brass.
Let's modify our equipment and make something new. And then there's a final showdown after that.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that to be the end of the movie.
Yeah, that's
it came very, very quickly. And, you know, there was sort of this moment of like, you know, sort of the Deus Machina, like super convenient that we can, you know, kind of reverse the damaged unit to suck him in. So yeah, I was kind of surprised that was it. I wanted more Garaka. He was such an interesting villain in this big, you know, imposing presence.
You built his entire world.
Oh yeah,
and now he's gone.
Yeah, it was wild.
Not to say he's gone. He can.
Well, I mean,
there's a way, but
that they broke it open once. They can do it again.
It's
you know,
just
plus that thing does not look secure. Let me tell you,
not at all.
Like, hey, it's technically closed, but like,
come on,
guys.
But no, it's just, you know, in watching the trailer too, the trailer really pushes the ice.
The trailer plays up Garaka and the ice a lot.
You don't get that like beach ice scene until there's like 25 minutes left.
Yeah.
And so when that happened, I was like, oh, we got like an hour left in this film.
Yeah. I thought that was going to be like our midpoint.
Yeah.
You know?
And then when it ended, I was like, oh, we don't have an hour left in this film.
We got nothing. That was it.
And it wasn't bad because it was still a good showdown. It was still, you know, and you still had Nanjiani's character come in with the Fire Master element that they built up and connecting everything in that way. And it was still well done. It just could have been more.
So, yeah, I definitely agree that it could have been more. The only counterpoint that I have to that, there's two things. One, with the animated series being such a big influence on this, if you break down the pacing of the movie, you watch any episode of the Ghostbusters animated series, it is setup, a whole bunch of other stuff, and then in your last like 5 minutes, you have like the quick solution where it's like, oh, here we are, action. Oh, we figured out the thing that's going to stop him, and boom, we're done.
Yeah.
I feel in many ways the pacing of this movie is very similar to a very long episode of, you know, a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah.
It kind of hits a lot of those similar beats. It's, you know, your final showdown's very quick. Another thing, If you watch the original Ghostbusters movies, it's a lot of buildup.
Yeah.
And then everything gets done in a very, like, if you think about Gozer in the first movie, you have this whole movie building up to it. Gozer shows up. The Destructor shows up. You get the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. There's a little bit of action, and then it's done.
I think maybe where it's easier to forget about that maybe in the sense that being born in 99, you know, that movie was 15 years old when I was born. And like I didn't watch a trailer leading up to that film. So I go into that, watching this trailer really makes it seem like you're going to get a lot of ice, a lot of Garaka. And I think that's maybe what played into it for me a little bit more. It's not like I was like, oh, we're going to the theaters in 1984. Trust me, I wish I could have, because I'm pretty sure Ghostbusters and Gremlins came out the same day. Like, imagine that double feature.
Oh, man.
But
I'd watch that. I'd stay in the theater all day. Are you kidding me? That's
I'd watch them both twice.
Yeah.
But I think maybe the trailer aspect maybe did it a little injustice.
I think trailer, yes. Definitely trailers were Garaka heavy.
Yeah.
I also think that that's just kind of modern movies.
Yeah.
I mean, what modern movie have you seen where the villain isn't relatively prevalent throughout the entire film?
I can name one that did really well, and I'm not saying it's an earth-shattering, groundbreaking, great movie. It is a good horror movie. Barbarian.
Okay. Hey, yes. Okay. Yes.
I don't. That one always just pops in my head. I thought Bill Skarsgård was the bad guy in that film, but that's again another episode, another discussion for another day. But that's just me. Like, there is one that I can think of that's just me being like that. But no, I agree. In 99% of cases, your trailer is very, very villain heavy.
Yes, and
that's a selling point.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, your villain, that's the whole point of the movie. I mean,
and like that's what amped me up for this film. I was like, because we talked about the character design. I was like, that looks awesome.
Oh, absolutely. Garaka, like, from the first reveal, I think the first thing I ever saw of Garaka was it was that very short clip in like one of the first trailers where you just see him from behind.
Yeah.
And also, I want to address the fact, I don't know if there was a bunch of stuff they made specifically for the trailers or if there was stuff that got cut.
Okay.
But there were multiple scenes in some of the trailers that I did not see in the movie.
Really?
Shots of Garaka that were not in the final movie. Some of them in the early trailers. Also, there was a specific scene that I was waiting for where Lucky is, getting frozen, and you see the corners of her eyes start to freeze over.
She gets frozen, but you don't see that. Exactly. I was waiting for that too.
Exactly.
Yes.
That was a moment that I was waiting for, because that was one of the things that I was kind of like hyped for, because I'm like, wow, I was like, this looks like we could, be losing some main characters. Yeah. It looks like it could be like a real tough showdown.
Because in the trailer, isn't the monologue where he's like, it kills you with fear. You shed your last tear, and then you die with fear, and then it shows that clip, and you're like, that's why you kind of think that.
Oh man, this is wild. And some of that could have just been editing. I'm sure there was a bunch of stuff that probably got cut from the final, but so I do agree. Pacing there towards the end, it did feel a little rushed.
Yeah.
The final solution was a little bit of an act of convenience. Yeah. But again, going back to original Ghostbusters, hey guys, let's cross the streams. That thing that I told you we should never do in the beginning of the movie randomly, let's do that. Yeah. And that just worked. And that's always been Ghostbusters. It just kind of worked. Yeah. And so we went with it. Sure. And that even shows in the movie. The ghost trap is full. And they're like, didn't you guys think about this? And it's like, well, it's the 80s. We didn't really it's that whole kind of these guys were geniuses and they were doing incredible things. They were also kind of just making it up as they went. Yeah. And that's always been the Ghostbusters thing. Yeah. It's like you kind of just make it up as you go. So I can't necessarily fault it too much. Yeah. I do wish there was more. I would love to see more Garaka, but
let's just say we don't. Like you said. Maybe. Like we said. They busted out before. So
let's crack that thing open. Let's go. One more.
Let's get it one more. Ghostbusters Garaka Returns will be the next one, right? We're already making this movie. Better score. Garaka returns. Let's
this is easy. This is easy. Yeah. I don't know why they've taken so long to make more of these movies.
We're not making the score, but it's easy to make one.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing it. Are you kidding me? Like, I'm not making the score, but like, it's easy. We'll get some other guy to do it. They do it all the time. You know?
Yeah, for sure. Continue with the Mad. This is probably my last Mad, but and you might have more, but the mid-credit scene is where I'd throw here. And this also plays into the hype. I looked up, does this have a post-credit scene? And somebody said, if you're ready to see the next adventure, stay for the credits. And so I guess I can't really fault the movie too much in this sense, but it was just it was the mini Stay Puft guys. And so in that sense, I was really let down because I was like, this did nothing to show me the next adventure of the Ghostbusters, unless they're trying to stop this truck at the beginning of the next one or something. But, so I'd throw this in the mix. I guess I was hyped for it and let down. But even if I wasn't hyped for it, that kind of would have been a letdown of a mid-credit trailer or a mid-credit teaser anyway.
Absolutely. So in the meh column, mini Stay Puffs, just in general, they are just, I don't know if this is just, again, it's the whole, it's hard to please a Ghostbuster fan. Mini Stay Puffs to me are just reading way too close to the territory of like Minions. Yeah. I feel like the mini Stay Puffs were invented for Afterlife. One is a reference to the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in the first movie, which I understand. It's super iconic. Yeah. It is nostalgia. A bit of fan service. But it was also during that time period, because the Afterlife was being written and then I think was originally slated to come out in 2020. I may have gotten delayed to 2021 with the pandemic and everything. But it was, the mini Stay Puffs to me always felt like a knee-jerk reaction to the era of Baby Yoda. Yeah. It was like, hey, remember that thing from the movie you love? We made it small and cute, and now it's here, and you can buy it at Target. And that was the mini Stay Puffs to me.
And then, Funko being... I was a huge Funko guy for a while, and I still have some pops of some of my favorites, but they jumped on it.
Who doesn't?
You got S'more Stay Puffed. You got Smush Stay Puffed. You got, they took advantage of it. The whole toy market ran with it.
I'm not going to lie. For the release of this movie, they came out with... Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, right there. For the release of this movie, they had little mystery boxes that you could buy that would either have a mystery figure of Slimer or one of the Stay Puffs. Yeah. And I have almost the complete set already because that's just the way it is. My feelings towards it though, they made sense to me in the first movie. Yeah. And then we got to this film. It would have been more palatable to me to have maybe a scene where they were in that lab. Yeah. And maybe you saw a couple of them rattling around in like a hamster cage. Yeah. But to have multiple long shot sequences, three different
we get mid-credit scene,
shot sequences.
We get the lab and we get the basement with the with podcast. Yeah.
And literally, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love that they are just chaotic little marshmallow goblins. Yeah. And the fact that the whole thing, those, little mini Stay Puffs are, if you go back to the first Ghostbusters movie, Ray chose the form of the Destructor, which was the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Yeah. In Afterlife, when Gozer is resurrecting, that is when we see these mini Stay Puffs first emerge. And in my mind, and I don't know if there's a canon explanation for this. I'm sure there is. There's a canon explanation for almost everything nowadays. Yeah. In my mind, I always assumed that the reason those mini Stay Puft came about was because the last chosen form of the Destructor was the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Yeah. And so it began affecting the marshmallow substance in the area to create these mini Stay Puffs because, ghosts and magic and whatnot. Yeah. It makes sense. Like, oh, yeah, the last time the Destructor was brought about, it was this marshmallow. And now we have these marshmallows that are turning into little versions of it. I love that they're so destructive and chaotic because they are the Destructor.
Yeah, or the Destructor, yeah.
Yeah, and so I love that. I love that at one point one of them was burning its own face off with this with a car cigarette, like cigarette lighter. It's stuff like that. But at the same time, I have this battle with myself because I'm like, I don't know why they're still here.
Yeah.
Gozer's gone. Shouldn't they be gone if they were a byproduct of Gozer? Even if they are still around, there's so many of them, and honestly, we don't need to see them that much.
Yeah.
You know, I like I said, if they had done one, even one slightly extended sequence of those little guys just running around being terrorists, fine. Yeah. I'll give it to you. Yeah. Whatever. Like, we're here for a good time, but they went back to it too much. And I think there was so much new stuff we could have been seeing.
Yeah.
There was Puker, that little potato guy.
Yeah.
Like, I love that dude. And, you know, we got a couple scenes with him.
Yeah. The other monster in the lab was really scary.
Oh, my, the translucent thing with the teeth.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that guy was. He was great.
Yeah.
And what did we do with him?
And then we got the Possessor.
You know, and Possessor I thought was a really cool idea. And that's at the end of the movie when we got that mid-credit sequence. I thought it was going to be Possessor. I thought we were going back to Possessor and we were going to set up, you know, maybe Possessor was stealing that truck and then we were going to find out that there was something in the back of the truck that was important. Like some Ark of the Covenant-esque nonsense, you know, something that would set up something new.
Yeah.
But instead it was just, Stay Puft stealing a marshmallow truck. And what does that mean? Probably more of those guys.
Yeah.
So it's... Those guys fall into a meh for me just because I feel like we're riding a very dangerous line with them.
Yeah.
And if we do get a Ghostbusters 3, which I'm hopeful for. I really am hopeful for. I hope the negative reception of a small group does not ruin our chances of furthering this franchise.
Yeah.
If there is a Ghostbusters 3, I think better score.
Better score.
Maybe more Garaka. I'll take it. More Garaka. Returns. And no more mini Stay Puffs. Or
I'm with you.
If we do,
dial it back.
Have one or two, have them in the background of a shot.
Yeah.
Have them, be a throwaway thing. We don't need so much focus on them. We're building a great new world. Mm-hmm. So many good actors, so many interesting new characters. Yeah. It's just kind of, falling a little short for me.
Yeah.
With the mini Stay Puft. So
I like the Minion take. They do kind of feel like Minions. But backtracking to the Possessor, when me and my cousin were watching this earlier today, I was like, Possessor. Like I'm watching that mid-credits, I'm like, I'm amped a little bit. Like I know it's not anything about the characters or the next story, but I was like, it kind of felt like it could be the next story. I was thinking the same thing. Like this could be the bigger picture.
Oh yeah.
And that when they cut to the inside, and I was like, oh. Mm-hmm. Okay. I was like, okay.
Or even if it was like, a couple of those little guys rattling around in there, but the Possessor had possessed the truck and maybe there was a couple of those guys rattling around. I don't care.
Yeah.
Throw them in here and there. That's fine. They become like an Easter egg in the movies, whatever.
Yeah.
But realistically, I don't need to keep seeing more. I don't.
For sure.
I don't like the thought that like someday we could see like a spin-off series or something of like it's the mini Stay Puffs. Like don't.
What was
let's
it?
not
Like the
don't do that.
Spin-off?
Exactly. Like
Stay Puft spin-off.
We don't need any of that. We don't want it. I get that I think the mini Stay Puffs are, again, it's a marketing opportunity. Yeah. They were popular enough from Afterlife that they're like, well, we got to bring these guys back.
It's
we can sell toys. Yeah.
Yep.
So
it's making I Am Groot series where it's just following the Stay Puft adventures. There's no Ghostbusters in it. It's just the Stay Puft guys. But no, man, it's definitely catering the young market.
They're in New York. Let's toss a couple of them down a sewer drain and watch the rats eat them.
Let's get a spin-off.
There we go.
Where humans don't exist. It's just Stay Puft people.
Just in a post-apocalyptic world where the mini Stay Puffs had become the dominant species.
Yeah.
Okay.
Better score in the third movie, more Garaka, and then a spin-off series with Stay
then
Puft people.
Okay. So in the third movie, Garaka's going to kill all humanity, and then the Stay Puffs inherit the Earth, and then, okay, you know what? We could be onto something. I've heard worse ideas that have become movies, so we could be. I think for me, the only other stuff that I could maybe throw into the meh.
Yeah.
I think the relationship between Phoebe and I don't know if her name was technically Melody.
Yeah,
but the ghost girl.
Yeah, I think that's all we got as far as name goes.
So Phoebe and the ghost girl. I see what they were doing with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I, again, that's something that to me Red is very very Ghostbusters cartoon. It's you have this like, oh, it's the double cross. It's this oh, I made friends with this ghost and stuff like that. There were a couple things there that to me, one, it was way too convenient.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel like there was actually enough manipulation going on.
No.
It felt like there was no leading.
Yeah.
They
played chess once and she was hooked.
Exactly. And that's the thing, like, honey, it's tough to meet people. I get it. Yeah. But like, come on.
Yeah.
No, I just felt like if that was supposed to be the situation, there wasn't a lot of manipulation that was going on. I felt like Phoebe was going to end up doing that regardless of what else happened in the movie.
Yeah.
It was this inevitability that she was going to end up trying that one way or another.
Yeah.
This was kind of a loose excuse for that to happen. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more leading with that. I think that, Melody could have slyly planted some hints or kind of led her to that certain decision.
Yeah.
Maybe coerce her into being like, well, show me the lab.
Yeah.
Like, let me see, let me be part of this world. Maybe there's something in the lab that could help me.
Yeah.
And then they get there and, she like kind of convinces her like, oh, but you could be part of my world for even just a moment, sort of. And I that was a little bit, to me, it felt like, oh, it had to happen for the story.
Yeah.
I think that there was a little bit that could have been, done more there. Also, what wasn't said throughout that whole situation spoke a lot to me. Yeah. Obviously, Phoebe's going through some she's figuring some things out.
Yeah.
She obviously was a little bit more than friendly with this girl.
Caution.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Big time. And that's the thing is like, that was pretty obvious, but they did it in enough of a way where it's like, oh, they were just friends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that
commit one way or the other.
Exactly. And that to me, that's those two reasons is why that situation falls into the meh for me.
Yeah.
I don't think anything that was there was necessarily inherently bad.
Yeah.
I just think, and again, as someone who's never written a movie and never attempted any of this myself, it's very easy for me to look at this and be like, well, you did a bad job and you should feel bad about it. I just think, having watched the movie, crank up the manipulation factor. I wanted to, okay, really, really weird reference to pull here. I wanted to see her more like Meg in Disney's Hercules.
Okay.
Like, give me that level of manipulation.
Yeah.
Give me that really heavy-handed, like,
Okay.
I'm going to sucker you into this.
Yeah.
And, like, that's why it's going to hurt so bad.
And that's why I think committing to could have made it hurt even worse. Like, if you commit to the love side of things.
Exactly.
Then her heart's broken, too.
Especially because you're looking at Phoebe, like, this is someone who's very, very reserved.
Yeah.
Does not really give in to, like, emotion very often. Very, like, very intelligent, but very sort of stoic character. Super, super introverted.
Yeah.
To have a character like that not only embrace these emotions, but especially in a way that, unfortunately, in the year 2024 is still seen as somewhat of a taboo.
Yeah.
Because then it's not only the fact, like, oh, I'm kind of, having these new emotions and I'm sort of embracing the idea of being in love, but it is, I'm also accepting, this unconventional part of myself within the process. That in had that been the case, that moment where they're both in the basement right before, like, everything explodes, in Phoebe, clicks on the proton, that would have had so much more weight to it.
Yeah.
Because you would have felt that you would have been there for her pain.
Yeah.
Instead, it's like, hey man, you made a really impulsive decision for no reason.
Yeah.
So like I said, I would have loved to have seen them step that up. Yeah. I understand, and maybe there was more. Maybe there was a little bit more going on.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. Studios are really shy about stuff nowadays.
For sure.
It's become one of those things where, not everybody's willing to put something like that out there, especially in a franchise like this.
Yes.
This is Ghostbusters to become a blockbuster franchise. It's not easy. Yeah. To do something like that with something like this.
For sure. And I'm not saying full send commit on the love thing. I'm saying full send one way or the other.
Yeah. Agreed.
Because I feel like leaving it in the middle for interpretation almost makes it feel like you're waiting to see how people react to this. If they react poorly, they were friends the whole time. If people are open to it, you up it in the next movie.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And a lot of studios play that game nowadays.
Yeah. How will they react? Yeah. Make your movie.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah. Do what you want to do. And again, though, I mean, studios, they're the ones giving the money. You got to make them happy. And
100%.
Who knows what the intention was?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm reading into it wrong.
This is Sony,
who knows?
Right?
Yes, it is Sony.
They are notorious for having studio interference. So
yeah. Hey, I saw the Madam Web review.
Oh,
don't worry.
Man. No, Sony in general, I mean, we've obviously seen it more prominent in the superhero films they've made than any other. But at the end of the day, Sony, almost in every film they have, has a lot of studio interference, and that's why Raimi struggled to that third movie. He's like, you're not letting me do what I want to do. So I see. Sometimes you have to give my buddy said I wouldn't let her direct another movie. I was like, you have to give people the benefit of the doubt that it worked with Sony because sometimes it's not their whole creative freedom there, Yeah. So
absolutely.
But
yeah, that was.
Yeah, I can agree with that take 100%.
For the meh, those were my big things. Yeah. I think that, like I said, all in all, there wasn't a whole lot I was unhappy about with this movie.
No.
I enjoyed my experience with it. Loved seeing Slimer back too.
Yeah.
I haven't even talked about Slimer's butt yet. We could do a whole episode on that.
Whole episode on Slimer's butt. Slimer's butt miniseries.
Yeah, he turned around in that one scene. Whole crack, top to bottom. Like, hey man, that's what I'm here for, really. Like,
exactly.
That's all I needed. Give me 2 hours of that.
Yeah.
But no, I said very, very little that I have to say negatively about this. Kind of on your point of seeing how people react to things. When I walked out too, I felt like we really had throughout this movie the potential for 3 different groups of Ghostbusters that we were seeing. Of course, you have your original crew.
Yep.
Which in this film was represented. You had Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson, Dan Aykroyd, and Annie Potts.
Yep.
One other thing I can say: give Annie Potts more to do.
Yeah.
She, first movie, she was there.
Another young
she didn't have a lot to do. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
I can understand her not having a lot to do in the first movie. In this movie, she got suited up.
Yeah.
She had that little,
gauntlet, infinity gauntlet type thing.
Little pew gauntlet. I love that.
King Kong is getting,
Yeah, let's not, hey, man, yeah, let's strap King Kong up with one of those, fighting the big ghosts. But yeah, I give her a little bit more to do. I it is what it is. They only had so much time for everybody, and I'm just glad that we got to see her again. But, we had that original 4. We do have the new kids. We got Podcast, which I don't know if they ever gave his character a real name.
I don't think we. I don't think they have.
We got Podcast. We got Phoebe. We got Trevor. And then of course we have Lucky.
Yeah.
Those newer 4. But then we have this weird middle crew, where we've got Paul Rudd's Gary Gruberson. We've got Kumail Nanjiani's character.
Yeah.
We have Carrie Coon.
Yeah.
And then that 4th guy. And I know I talked to you about this before. Pinfield?
Pinfield, yeah.
Pinfield was his name in the movie.
They don't even say it. You have to get that from looking at the patch.
Because I mentioned that as I was, we were talking a little bit before this, and I was like, there was that one guy, and I enjoyed his character. Yeah. I thought he was kind of interesting. He had a couple funny moments. Mm-hmm. I would love to see more of him in another movie. He's kind of like James Bond reference, but he's kind of like Q.
Yeah.
He's the guy making all this stuff, but those 4, I almost feel like is we have these 3 different generations that all 3 are kind of their own little groups, and I know the last 4 I mentioned with Paul Rudd, and they all haven't really done anything together, but I just have this feeling depending on how audiences react, we could see more if they do future movies phasing out the original guys. Seeing less of Bill Murray,
more Nanjiani.
Seeing, exactly. Yeah. And kind of substituting and phasing in these 2 new groups, because then you have an older crew still, and then you have the Junior. Kids. Exactly. Yeah, you got the the adults,
the school
and then
of Ghostbusters.
You have the recruits down there. So, I think they're setting themselves up that they could go in so many different ways.
For sure.
If they continue this franchise. And they've set themselves up with just an unbelievable pool of options, too. So
minor detail that I loved, I got to mention it before we head over to final thoughts. Pinfield on his arm, the patch, how they have the...
Yes,
it was a mechanic, a mechanical, the settings app on iPhone. And it was the little gear.
It was the gear.
It was a gear circle with the ghost crossed out. I thought that was just a cool minor detail.
I will say this movie gave us no shortage of new collectibles for Ghostbusters fans. Yep. I mean... upgraded proton packs, those red jackets, new patches, again, Annie Potts, her arm cannon, there are so many little things, and they did it in a way that felt genuine and very in place.
You can collect the orb.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh man, I can't wait for get the paperweight of that at Spencer's.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it's they gave us so much that was new, but it none of it felt like I was being forced into.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of it was subtle. I mean, the you had to catch that. That wasn't shoved down your throat.
And those are the little details that
Just like the goo dropping out of the gun, like stuff like that. You know, you have to really catch it. You know,
and when this hits when this hits digital download or when it comes out on Blu-ray, stuff like that, those are the details that people are going to be agonizing over.
Yeah,
is looking at every little bit of every little costume.
Yeah, because you don't have a guy that goes nice patch or anything like that. You have to catch it.
Oh yeah, it's just part of the world that they've developed, and that was nice because in the original Ghostbusters, you know, they roll up with these crazy outfits and all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, random bits hanging here and there.
Yeah.
None of it's ever explained.
No.
You know, they kind of just throw you in and they're like, yeah, this is a ghost trap.
Yeah.
You know, it's a
You're like, yeah,
Mulan ghost trap. And it's like,
hell yeah.
Yeah, sure. Don't look in it. Okay, cool. Well, that guy just did. He seems okay, but it's all right.
Yeah. But no, for sure. A lot of attention to detail going back to that. I don't have anything that bad, and we've kind of mentioned it. Nothing was bad. We did have an extensive I guess, but
a little.
There's
bit.
a lot of good in this film. In our opinion.
I don't have anything that walking out of this movie I was like, you know, I don't like that. Yeah. You know, I hate it. It stinks. Like none of that. No. I went into this movie with really no expectations. Yeah. I tried not to run into spoilers.
Yeah.
I tried to let myself be pretty fresh for it. And I know that going into it as, you know, a Ghostbusters fan, I'm hard to please.
Yeah.
And I was really happy that I walked out of this entertained, feeling good. You know, I wasn't upset about anything. So, I really don't think I have anything that I would say was bad.
Yeah. If you look at all the Ghostbusters movies, the audience score is always 20% higher. So when I was bringing you on and I was seeing the early critical reception, I was like, oh, we're going to have a dynamic here. I'm going to really enjoy this film, and Rob's going to tear to shreds. And when you came to the house, you're like, I really enjoyed it. I was like, oh, we might have a lot of similar takes. And I feel like we've agreed on just about everything with this film.
Oh yeah.
And I'm happy. Like, I'm like, okay, so I'm on the same level as, you know, a Ghostbusters fan can enjoy this too, and a casual fan can enjoy this as well. Yeah. So.
And I like that dynamic too, knowing that, like, you know, I'm a fan. I've, you know, obviously seen all the movies. I've watched, you know, the cartoons. I have a Ghostbusters Firehouse playset at home. Yeah. Like, I'm going to go home and recreate the movie tonight. But,
there you go.
You know, that's a whole other thing. But no, it's one of those things that, you know, as a fan, one of the things that you kind of worry about with these, you know, with them kind of bringing up these old franchises is, you know, if I like it, that's one thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm already committed.
Yeah.
But, like, is the general public going to be open to this? Are just regular everyday people going to go see this movie to the point where, like, we will get a chance at another one or anything like that? So, you know, from my point of view too, you know, coming in here and talking to you and you know, hearing that you enjoyed it, because I was a little worried. I was like, I don't know, maybe that was too Ghostbusters-y. Yeah. Maybe, like, it just isn't going to land with people, but...
In my trailer reaction, I mean, it was dumb fun, but it was a lot more fun. Like...
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And adding Nanjiani was great, but we can hop over to our final thoughts and score now, so... Anything you'd like to leave off with this film, and what do you give it out of 10?
Nothing real big to leave off on. I mean, I've talked enough. You know,
we've covered a lot.
People know how I feel about it. Like I said, it's a good time.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters fan or not, if you get a chance, you know, get out to the theaters, see it in theaters. Honestly,
a huge theater advocate here.
The scale of some of the shots, the, you know, top of the firehouse, you know, exploding. Even some of the scenes, you know, some of the scenes with Garaka, some of the scenes in the lab, there are so many little details. Do yourself a favor, see it on a big screen, experience it, you know, go to the XD, get the full experience. It's totally worth it. And I know in a landscape where theater tickets are getting more and more expensive. That
Yeah.
can be a tough thing to do, but go out, have a good time, see it in theaters.
It's a good date night. This is a good family movie night.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Have fun with it.
Take everybody.
You don't have to go sit by yourself in the theater. Like,
no, not at all. In fact, I would advise against it. Go see it with people.
Yeah.
It's a good time. It'll give you guys stuff to talk about.
Time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, score wise, just having literally left the theater and come over to your house to record this. So I'm still riding that high a little bit. I got the, popcorn sweats going on.
The recency bias.
Yeah. But I mean, right now, I'm feeling like a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Probably. That might, be a little high, but I honestly, in my opinion, I would rate this one higher than Afterlife.
Okay.
I loved Afterlife for so many different reasons. And it did do so much so well, but again, Afterlife, it's the Force Awakens of the Ghostbusters world. Yeah. This was their Last Jedi, and man, they pulled it off.
Yeah.
They brought something that, I'd go back tomorrow and watch this movie again.
Yeah, I'd see this one again.
Absolutely. Like, this would be one of the things I would return to the theater
I think
for.
all of the ghosts, well, I won't say all of them. One of them doesn't, but most, this storyline has high replay value.
This continuity.
Yeah.
Yes.
It has high replay value.
I have a lot of thoughts on 2016.
Yeah,
and
that's a whole episode. That might be two episodes.
It might not be what you think. 2016...
You love it.
It is on par of the quality of Ghostbusters 2.
Okay.
Until the final act.
Yeah.
The final act falls apart for me because they try to make it an action movie.
Yeah. The final act of Ghostbusters 2 is my favorite part.
Oh, the final act of Ghostbusters 2 trumps 2016 1,000 times over.
Yeah.
2016, their biggest misstep is that at the end, they try to turn it into like a shootout, and they try to make it too actiony.
Yeah.
And that was my worry with this movie, is that it was going to be too actiony, and they avoided that.
Yeah.
2016, it's not my favorite. Yeah. But I think comedy-wise, movie-wise, for a reboot, which was a risky move.
Yeah.
It's on par in a lot of ways with 2.
That's fair.
But I don't want to get into all that here, and I'm not trying to fill your YouTube channal with hate comments because that's risky territory.
Yeah, you're good. For me, Bustin' makes me feel good. I loved that line. Paul Rudd.
Let me tell you, that whole scene.
When there's something strange, who are they gonna call? He's like, one more thing. Bustin' makes me feel. She's like, get out.
That scene again, the character aspect, the relationship between the two of them. Oh, that scene, it cracked me up. Yeah. I was dying on that
for sure. Score for me though, I was actually in the same realm as you. I was in 7.5. I'll probably land on 7.5, and the reason why is I think you talked me out of, tarnishing it as much for the ending.
Yeah,
I think I was in that 7.5, and you relating it to the show, and I'll give it the half point back for that.
I mean, I'm telling you, Ghostbusters movies, it's always about the build up.
Yeah.
The finale is never, the finale is always a bit of a spectacle.
Yeah.
Statue of Liberty walking through New York, blowing the roof off a New York City high rise. It's big stuff. But when you think about those early movies, they were working on a tighter budget. So, it was more about building up your story and your characters. And that's, this movie follows that same pattern. For sure. I can't fault it for not having more Garaka.
Well, he's coming back, remember?
Yeah, he's definitely coming back. He's gonna.
We're gonna speak this into existence on this channel, but yeah, I'll land on a 7.5 from here.
Awesome. So. Well, hey man, Ghostbusters fan to average everyday movie lover.
Yeah,
I'm glad we can agree.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. We're in the same boat. That'll do it for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Rob, thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me.
For sure. If and when this third one comes out, you'll be back. And we've talked. We have some movies that you'd like to come on for. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to be back anytime. And,
for sure.
I'll definitely be stopping back by later. We'll work out our rough pitch for Ghostbusters 3.
We won't take it to Sony though. We'll take it to Universal. Let's do interference.
I don't know how Sony will feel about that.
No,
but
we have to go to Sony.
We'll work it out. We'll tweak the name a little bit. They're given the budget, so it's fine. We'll just do spin off.
But thank you again for coming on. Thank all of you for watching. If you like what you're watching, check out some of these other videos. Subscribe up here. Social links down in the description below. You're here. Click them. Follow them, please. Again, thank you for watching, and we will talk to you all soon. Peace.